US President Donald Trump is due to announce a decision that could have far-reaching global consequences. Whether he will follow through on his rhetoric and decertify the Iran nuclear deal.
Never, ever have I seen
one of the worst deals I've ever seen.
Frankly, that deal is an embarrassment.
Iran has not lived up to the spirit of the agreement.
In 2015, the landmark deal was agreed to by Iran and the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council, plus Germany. Iran agreed to limit its nuclear program in return for the easing of economic sanctions. It was seen as a win for the path to world peace and one of the defining features of Barack Obama's presidency. Every 90 days, the US president has to certify that the deal is still in the country's national interests and that Iran is meeting its obligations. But there's speculation Trump intends to decertify it, potentially pulling the US out of the deal and reimposing sanctions.
It is time for the entire world to join us in demanding that Iran's government end its pursuit of death and destruction.
We think this program is really one of the most important achievements of the international community.
It has played a positive and important role in ensuring nuclear non-proliferation and protecting peace and stability in the Middle East.
Our big concern is that the security situation would get worse if the US rejects the Iran nuclear deal, and not better.
Warnings and pleas for the US not to walk away from the deal from the international community, fearful of instability and military conflict. Supporters say the deal has achieved its aim of stopping Iran from developing nuclear weapons, and it has seen Iran engage with the international community again. The deal's European partners have indicated it will live on, with or without the US.
آمریکا بخواد علیه یک معاهده و قرارداد بین المللی که مورد تایید شورای امنیت سازمان ملل و اساساً بخشی از قطعنامه 2231 است. آمریکا تنها با ایران مخالفت نمیکنه الان. آمریکا داره با جهان مخالفت میکنه. آمریکا داره با سازمان ملل مبارزه میکنه.
But opponents to the deal say Iran is using it as cover to advance its military ambitions and expand its influence in the Middle East, and that it needs to be stopped. If Trump does decertify the deal, Congress will have 60 days to decide whether to reimpose sanctions on Iran. Will Trump make good on his threats and pull the US out of the nuclear deal? And will this lead to Iran once again being a pariah state, or to the US being the one left out on its own? Yvette McCullough, The Newsmakers.
Well, joining me now from London is Elahi Mohtasham. She's an Iranian affairs analyst who's met with both Iranian President Hassan Rouhani and Foreign Minister Javad Zarif on nuclear issues. In Baton Rouge, Louisiana, we have Rob Maness. He's a retired U.S. Air Force colonel. And in Washington, D.C., James Jatras. He's a former policy advisor for U.S. Senate Republicans. I thank you all for joining us. Rob Maness, let me begin with you. It's no secret that Trump wants to walk away from the deal. And I guess if you believe the a recent report from the Washington Post, Trump actually, quote, threw a fit when advisors suggested that they certify the deal and keep on going every 90 days. Tell me, what do you think? Do you think Trump should walk away from the deal?
Well, I think he absolutely should. Number one reason is that it was a campaign promise that he made, but more importantly is the deal is really bad for the United States of America and our allies. It virtually guarantees the Iranians will become a nuclear weapons power. It doesn't prevent ballistic missile technology from being further developed and tested, and we see what the problems are in North Korea. That's created when combined with the nuclear weapons capability that the West allowed North Korea to develop, and we appear to be on the same track with the Iranians. So I think it's a bad deal. We've got to get the missile technology and testing incorporated into any other agreements. And then finally, it's an illegal agreement under the Constitution of the United States. The United States Senate is the sole power for ratifying treaties. This is a treaty no matter what name was put on it by the Obama administration, and the Senate has not ratified it. So the United States needs to take another look at this. The best way to do that is to remove itself, decertify from the JCPOA, I think another option would be, and I would recommend it, that the United States declare the Iranian Republican Guard Corps an international terrorist organization.
And you've laid it all out there, and we'll unpack all of that as we go along.
Mess around.
Okay, so before I bring in the others, just very briefly, since the deal was signed, Rob, is there any evidence whatsoever that Iran has gotten closer to developing a nuclear weapon? We're not talking about missiles. We're not talking about what it's doing in Syria, in Yemen, or anywhere else. But is there any shred of evidence that they're any closer to actually developing a nuclear weapon, Rob?
Well, we don't know because of the inspection regime in the agreement is not good enough. The IAEI gets soil samples mailed in and has to trust that the Iranians are properly collecting the soil samples. The IAEA nor any American organizations are allowed to inspect on-site those facilities or any military facilities. So the answer to your question is we really don't know, and that makes it evidence that, yes, they could possibly and probably are closer to development of a nuclear weapon.
Elahi Mohtasham, the burden of proof is on the Iranians to prove that they're not developing a nuclear weapon, according to Rob Menes, not the other way around. Tell me why you think the deal is working and should continue, Elahi.
Well, it's understanding of what the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and international legal obligations of Iran are under the IAEA agreements related to that treaty. Because under those treaties, if we are talking legally, under a legal international basis, it is not Iran who has to prove whether it has not or it has got nuclear weapons. Under the legal international treaty, Iran has obligations to provide access to the declared nuclear material that Iran has held inside Iran. So this is the legal definition. And the International Atomic Energy Authority, which has to verify that, has continuously says that it has verified that Iran's declared nuclear material, which has been under inspection, Iran has complied with that. Now, if we are not happy with what international legal situation is something very different from what we want the international legal situation to be. So I think we must not confuse with what we want the international legal situation be with what Iran has actually signed. Because under the international legal situation, Iran does not have any nuclear weapons or nuclear fissile material.
Okay. James Jatras, we've had the British Prime Minister Theresa May come out with a statement reaffirming the UK's strong commitment to the deal alongside our European partners. She said we've had Germany's ambassador to Washington, Peter Wittig, telling The Guardian to unravel this deal would jeopardize US credibility and also the credibility of the West in the world. Do you agree with that?
I think that it's likely that if the United States does withdraw from this agreement, that nobody will be with us. Even our usual poodles, the British, will not follow the American lead on this one, I believe. That's why I think President Trump will decertify the agreement, but then throw the ball into Congress's court to see whether they are willing within the 60-day period to enact what they call snapback sanctions. And I think that ball is up in the air. We don't know how that's likely to turn out. My guess is they probably will not, but they might try to enact other sanctions that are directed against other matters not covered by the agreement, for example, missile technology and things of this sort. I would question that Donald Trump is simply keeping a campaign promise here. He actually said during the campaign that it's a bad deal, but he did not say he would tear it up. He said he would try to make it better. And I think some people here have the idea that by decertifying, we can push Iran into either pulling out of the deal themselves, which I think they would be foolish to do, or we could try to impose on them a new deal with more stringent terms. And given that no other country will be with us on that, I think that's highly unlikely.
Mm-hmm. And James, given that a lot of the arguments being made against the deal will say Iran is aggressive, Iran is doing terrible things in the region. A lot of those things might be true, whether it's in Syria, whether it's in Yemen. They speak of the $100 billion to conduct empire building. They mention the missile tests. All of these things might be happening, but is it unfair on Iran to bring up all those things when technically, when you actually talk about the deal itself, Iran seems to be compliant and not cheating?
I think it's not a question of fairness to Iran, but whether it's in our own national interest. If the limited purpose of the deal is to prevent Iran from developing a nuclear weapon, and experts like, for example, Scott Ritter have said that it is sufficient for that purpose, no deal is perfect. Yes, it might be nice to go fishing around in their nuclear, their other military facilities to see what interesting things are over there as well. That's one of the problems with arms control agreements going all the way back between the United States and the Soviet Union. No deal is perfect, but the question is it sufficient for its purpose? And the idea that you could take a deal that seems to be working with whatever flaws or limitations it has and trash it and come up with something we might deem to be much more suitable for us, I think is simply unrealistic.
Rob Maness, you mentioned that you'd like to see Iran's Revolutionary Guards Corps, the IRGC, labeled as a terrorist organization. That has been floated in the past few days. Iran has responded by saying that they will then treat the US as ISIS. Well, I should say not Iran officially, but the IRGC spokesman, Bahram Qasemi, said they will start to treat the US as ISIS. You see where this is going, right? I mean, you have a deal where things are relatively stable between the United States and Iran. Go and label the IRGC as a terrorist organization and all hell might break loose.
I would disagree that things are relatively stable between the United States and Iran. And I would also add just because the agreement seems to be being adhered to doesn't make the agreement in the interest of the United States. And the Iranians would be crazy to pull out of a nuclear agreement that's all in their favor, which excludes ballistic missile technology, which doesn't hold to task the IRGC for its terrorist activities throughout the Middle East, and that changes the balance of power away from America's allies. So the United States to decertify is a good first step. I think the president is going to do that. But I also believe that we should declare the IRGC an international terrorist organization based on their behavior and the facts. Now, the IRGC can do whatever it likes, or the Iranians can do whatever they like about the United States Army. But the United States Army will continue to do its mission to protect the interests of the United States of America and its allies and work with our allies such as NATO.
Okay, Elahi Mohtasham, let me ask you then, if, for example, Emmanuel Macron has his way and he finds some sort of compromise here where he has said, why don't we all renegotiate and include missiles, right? And people are hoping, many people are hoping Donald Trump goes in that direction. Would the Iranians renegotiate by including missiles and trying to rein in their missile program as a part of the Iran deal? Would they?
Yeah. I think as part of answer to your question, it's very important to analyze and explain what the actual nature of the deal is. The nature of the deal is that it is a public relations, confidence building, political deal. It's not a technological detail related to, I mean, for many people, especially our participants who have contributed in this debate today now, it's not really about the technologies of involved. It is a very political deal. And even if it is, in my opinion, based on what I have studied from Iran's debates internally, and even if the whole deal is off, is decertified, for example, by President Trump, it is my belief that nothing serious, the devastation that many people talk about, nothing serious would happen. The reason is that there are many people inside Iran, the same as many people inside the United States, who are opposing this deal. Many people are saying that as a political vehicle to advance Iran's national interest, the deal is not working. Yes, it has provided some economic benefit in terms of selling of Iran's oil, but in terms of investment, bringing capital to Iran, it hasn't been working. But yes, it has helped with the recession, but not, that much.
Certainly. If you'll allow me to come in here, right? And you
yes.
know Iran
so
better than I.
What I'm saying is that there is no disaster is going to happen.
Okay.
No, because even if this deal is going off, United States cannot go into war with Iran, for example. Iran is not like
let me take what you
any
said.
other country that, Iran is not like Syria attacking
so hold on.
Iran.
If you'll allow me to come in, let me take what you said and question it. Let me question it, right? So you have billions of dollars of deals in the works, right? Because economically, this has been fantastic for many companies, for the government. You have billions of dollars of deals in the works. This has been a deal that was the brainchild of the reformist camp, Rouhani, Zarif, and the like. You have hardliners who oppose the deal. If the US scraps it, won't this empower the hardliners who say, you see, we cannot talk to the West, we can't talk to those people, we can't trust them, and wouldn't that weaken the reformist camp? Elahi?
Yes, it does weaken the reformist camp in terms of economic values that in the long term it would bring to Iran. But once the deal is off in terms of security, military, strategic position of Iran, it's not going to be disastrous. I mean, what could Trump do after decertifying this deal? If the deal goes off, what are the options available to United States? Is it going to attack Iran militarily? Even in terms of even in economic terms speaking, Iran is today in much more a stronger position economically than it was after. My point is that this is a very important point. Do you know why? Because if the aim of President Trump and administration is to force Iran into, I'm in a sense answering directly your question in terms of missiles, if the intent is to force Iran into bringing into the negotiations the missiles, restriction on missiles, and other issues like Iran's involvement in the Middle East, it's not going to work. It's not going to work because economically it's not going to hurt Iran as much as giving up its missiles or giving up its involvement in Syria or with Hezbollah, etc.
So
I
need to bring in James.
Point.
Elahi, I need to bring in James Jatras. James Jatras. A soft decertification, if you like, some sort of compromise position. Is that tenable? Can it work? And can it prevent chaos?
Well, I don't know if it can be as a moderate position. No, I don't think so. I think what we could have is if the president decertifies the deal and Congress does not enact new sanctions, essentially the United States is still in the deal, whether or not it's been decertified. It's sort of a weird middle ground for us to be in. I think the bigger question is what other shoes may drop. With his decertification, President Trump is expected to unfold a broader policy agenda toward Iran. And let's be honest here, there are an awful lot of people here in Washington who are against this deal because what they really want is regime change in Tehran. They would like to see a replay of what happened in Iraq in 2003 and in Libya in 2011, and they would like nothing better for more hardline elements to come to power in Tehran. They would like nothing better than some kind of a pretext they can use to launch war against Iran. And I think President Trump has to be very, very careful here, because he said he wanted to get away from these wars like Iraq and Libya, and instead I think he's being boxed in here. Let's be honest here, by the partisans of Israel and of Saudi Arabia, our two closest partners in the region that are inveterate enemies of Iran.
Okay, well, for the moment, the Defense Secretary Mattis told a Senate hearing that it's in the national interest to keep the agreement alive. So Mattis seems to think it's a good deal for now. We'll be watching this closely. It'll be interesting to see what Trump does with the deal, whether he decertifies it or not. Rob Menace, James Jatras, and Elahi Mohtashem. I've got to move on, but I thank you all for joining us on the Newsmakers.